Hi guys, and welcome back to the channel. Today we're returning to the Insights series which I've started, and we're going to be concentrating on one of the most difficult things to do as a racing driver, one of the most difficult things to coach as a coach as well, and hopefully I can give you a little bit of insight into trail braking. So, a little bit just about how we're going to structure the video in the first place. We're going to do a little bit of video analysis. We're going to have a look at what trail braking is, why do we need it, how it works, or why is it effective, where do we use it on track, because you don't have to, I'll tell you right now for free, you don't have to use it at every corner, that's for certain. And obviously, importantly, at the end we're going to have a look at how to trail brake, and we're going to break that down with some video clips, and also we're going to dive into some telemetry to really show you why those gains happen and why they're effective. So first up then, what is trail braking? I'm afraid this won't really be a sort of whiteboard presentation of the car. You can obviously watch going around the circuit, but there'll be quite a bit of talking, and there are a lot of really helpful diagrams out there which most of them are copyrighted, so I can't put them on, but I urge you to go and have a look at some of them to really just emphasize what I'm saying. So what is trail braking? First instance, it's the release of the brake, or decreasing the braking pressure in a gradual manner as we enter a corner to adjust the balance of the car. What I mean by the balance is obviously the weight transfer between the front and the rear of the car, and this is an extremely advanced driving technique. This isn't for your sort of average driver, your beginner driver. This is something that you can really work on once you've got to grips with the basics of driving. So why do we need it then? And in essence, we need to be utilising the maximum amount of grip that the tyre has to offer at all phases during the corner. So what I mean by that is going through the braking phase, that transition phase to when you're turning and coming off of the brake, and obviously accelerating out the corner. And ideally, the professional drivers are using the maximum amount of grip that the tyre has to offer at all of those points. Whereas your traditional sort of amateur driver is going through phases where they're not using that maximum amount. So imagine you're traditionally, when you're taught how to drive, you would brake in a straight line, you'd come off the brakes and then you turn in, and there's that period in the middle where the tyre isn't really doing much, and obviously it's all about timing on when you come off the brakes and when you turn in, and that's really the nuance of effective trail braking is getting those timings tighter and closer together. So you think about that when you come off the brakes and you're in that phase where you're just about to turn, the tyre isn't really being used. You're not using the maximum amount of grip at that time. So a lot of amateur drivers either drive that way, or they brake too late and they brake too hard while they're trying to turn. So if you think the tyre has a maximum grip level, you want to be able to use that grip level fully, but in different ways. So in the initial phase, you want to be using that very, very much forward to back motion, sort of vertical motion, where you're using a lot of the grip to slow the car down. The weight of the car goes over the front to give those front tyres a lot of grip. And then as you turn in, you want to be coming off of the brake, and it's keeping that grip level utilised. It's keeping that weight transfer over the front of the car, but you're using more and more of the grip to turn rather than slow down. And as you do that, you're coming off of the brake, so you're keeping that maximum grip curve, but you're not using it for slowing down anymore. You're using it to rotate the car as well. So constant use of that maximum grip level available to you to maintain and adjust the balance of the car, and this can assist us in gaining that slight sort of on edge oversteer without losing performance going into a corner. A lot of drivers think that just that really on edge oversteer is where you gain those final tenths, not losing performance on the way into a corner and getting that rotation, and therefore obviously turning tighter at a higher speed. So how does it work? And as I mentioned just then, it's all about weight transfer and using the car's balance to our advantage as drivers. So when you brake, obviously the pitch of the car changes and the balance shifts towards the front of the car. And this is essential because at the end of the day, the front tyres are doing the turning and they're doing a lot of the slowing down as well, so they need weight on them to maximise that grip. Where there's weight on the tyres, there's grip, or they're trying to grip. Think about when you're in a different situation, when you're just turning left and right. The outside tyre is the one under stress, and therefore the one that's trying to grip the road. So use that sort of mindset and apply that during this. So, however, there's a limit, and it's all about finding the balance of grip between braking and turning, which is why the trailing off phase of trail braking is much more important than the initial how you get on the brake. It's all about how you come off the brake, and that's really the key that I want to get to in a second when we look at some of the analysis. But by doing this, you can control how much of the grip is at the front of the car or the rear of the car. So not only can you gain time on the way into a corner, but you can constantly adjust the car using the brake pedal, and therefore adjusting the weight transfer through the corner. So when do we need to use it? Usually, and obviously there is no one rule fits all here, usually it's into sort of slower to medium corners where it's going to help the car to rotate, braking down from higher speed, or you can use it to adjust the pitch and rotation of the car through those longer constant or changing radius corners like we've got here at Suzuka. I'm going to concentrate in a second on the first corner, because that's quite a long corner. You're braking from a high speed down into what is probably considered a slow to medium corner, and it's a changing radius corner as well. So it's a really interesting one to look at as an example, and we'll delve into the telemetry in a minute. But other sort of video or other examples I can think of, sort of Brooklands at Silverstone, again sort of increasing radius corner. First corner at Brands Hatch, and there's countless other examples, and actually, while we're on the subject of adjusting mid corner, typically if you're understeering into a corner, potentially due to not enough weight on the tyres, either you're braking too much and you're locking up the tyres, or you don't have enough weight over the front tyres, so you need to increase your braking pressure just to give them a bit more sort of opportunity to grip the road, I suppose. And obviously the other way, if you're oversteering on entry, you need to release the brakes a little bit early and have a shorter trailing phase. So enough of sort of the what, why, how, when, where. Let's get on to the how, the nitty gritty of obviously why you guys have clicked on this video, is how we get into trail braking. And I'm going to concentrate on one specific clip that I'm going to put in now, which is the first corner of Suzuka, and let's run through what exactly happens, and then let's break it down using the telemetry. So coming into the first turn here, then at Suzuka, we're in a Mercedes GT3 car. I'm just going to pause it here, and we're just going to talk about how we're going to approach this first corner, because it's a typical situation where you need to utilise trail braking to maximise your potential on the track. So as you come into the first corner, you're going to be braking, you're going to be using your maximum braking force, and just before you start to turn in, you're going to start to ease off of the brakes, and this is where the timing needs to be really tight, because you need to be staying on that maximum level of grip available for turning and braking. But as you increase the steering angle, you need to reduce your braking input. So let's take a look at it, and have a look at the right hand side at the bottom there, where I've got my braking and throttle inputs. You can see I'm on full throttle braking, start to ease off as I'm turning more, find the level of grip, and I just use the brake again to just adjust the front of the car, the weight balance over the front, to get that little bit more turn in that I was seeking. So let's have a look at it in slow-mo again, 60%. Full braking, I start to ease off as my steering angle tightens. I'm at the tightest point I'm turning, I'm not on the brake, but I feel the car needs a bit more weight on the front tyre, so I just dive on the brake just slightly again, as using it as a weight transfer method. Let's compare that to the same corner in the same car, same conditions, but without trail braking. So I'm just going to be on and off the brake as if it were a button almost. So full braking. I'm on this weird transition phase where the tyres aren't doing anything. I need to speed up because I don't think I'm on the edge of grip, and then slow down again. And it's very, very linear. It's very on and off. It's not using the maximum amount of grip at all of the time. So we're braking. We're using loads of grip here. But now in this phase, we're off, and the tyres aren't busy. Yes, they're turning, but they're not using the maximum level of grip. So we're losing so much time here. We're just letting time go left, right, and centre. And you can see how linear it is as we accelerate off to the next phase. So let's delve into why this happens in a bit more detail, and let's look at the telemetry. So We have switched over into the Motec i2 program, or the telemetry analysis program, which is extremely useful. And I urge you, if you haven't looked at this before and you haven't looked at any of the other things like suspension histograms and all that sort of thing, then I urge you to download this and try and get to grips with this. And it's one thing that I'm going to be looking to do on the channel is more and more sort of tutorials on not just how to use this, but also how to interpret the information that's coming from the program, or from the game to the program. So this is a direct telemetry export from the game, and you can see I've sort of split it into three different sections here. So the top one is the speed in kilometers an hour. So you can see we can drag the sort of timeline along, and it's decreasing as we're sort of going into the first corner onto the brake. This second sort of timeline here is the throttle and brake inputs. Obviously the green line is our throttle input. You can see where I'm changing down a gear in the car's just blipping the throttle for me to keep the revs up. And it's doing that automatically. It's not something that I'm doing. And so I had a little blip of the throttle here now as I accelerate out of the corner into T2. And obviously the red line is my braking phase. Down at the bottom here, you've also thought this would be really interesting to add is my steering angle. So we were discussing about how you come off the brakes and start to turn, and you can't combine those braking and turning phases into one. Then we're going to have a little bit of a comparison on that and try and show that in the telemetry as well. So what are we actually looking at here then? Now, in my eyes, this is a pretty typical trail brake phase. So if we just look at this middle graph here, you can see that I start to actually come on the brakes quite hard. Like I said, that initial phase, you're getting up to 100% braking ability. Actually, I only get up to 97%, but as I'm using ABS sort of that 3 out of 10 level, it's going to mask any, it's not going to make a difference between 97 and 100. It's going to mask any extra braking input I put in just by adding the ABS, sort of making it more pertinent there. And you can see I have that initial phase where I'm slowing down as quickly as I can. I'm on that 97% braking input, and as I start to come off the brakes, if you just take a look at the steering angle graph below, you see as I just start to decrease, my steering angle increases. And that's what I was saying about the tyres only have their maximum amount of grip, and the best way to utilise that is as you're coming off the brake, your steering angle is increasing. So we're actually looking here, I'm on the full brakes here, I'm starting to just come off the brakes, but I'm still turning, or I'm starting to turn more at this instance. I'm still on the brake to keep the weight of the car over the front wheels, because they're the ones that are going to be doing the braking at the end of the day. I start to decrease, I'm still on the brake, still scrubbing off speed, and here I find the confidence to actually blip the throttle a little bit, just because I may have over-braked slightly, but then I feel like that was a slight mistake, and I need the front end of the car just to get a little bit more weight over it. So I'd just dip on the brakes slightly more, just to gain that little bit of turn in that I'm craving in this second half of the corner here. So if you think we've gone through the first little phase of this right-hander, we're into that second phase now, into the right-hander, where we're going to go into the little mini straight onto turn 3 up here. And as I gain confidence, I'm obviously on the throttle and up through the gears into turn 3. So I thought it'd be really interesting to compare this to the video clip that I put up that didn't have any trail braking. So if we just compare it to lap 7 here, so I'm just going to go through this just one by one, and then we'll talk about it in unison. So if we just look at the speed graph at the top here, because I'm not braking and turning at the same time, the tyres can only do one thing, like I said, and obviously I need to brake, do an entire braking phase, and then I need to do my steering phase. So actually, because of that, we need to brake earlier. So we're braking really quite a lot earlier here. And if you just look at the speed trace here, by the time we get to where we come off the brakes in the video clip where we're not trail braking, if you just have a look at the speed up here, we're actually doing the best part of 30 kilometers an hour slower through this entire braking and turning phase here. So if you think we're probably on the apex of the first corner at this stage, that is an awful lot of speed that we have scrubbed off just because we're not turning and braking at the same time. You can see that actually it levels out here, and then the rest of the corner is relatively even. You know, only a couple of sort of kilometres now in it through this phase. But this initial braking phase is where we lose a lot of time, and it really is a considerable amount of time, which we'll go through in the sector times in a second. So looking at this, the throttle and brake map, it's a little bit confusing because on the comparison lap, the throttle and the brake is both white. But if you can see, I come off the throttle here, and this one going up is my braking input, where I'm up at 99% this entire time here, just slightly more than the red line, interestingly, and then I'm sharply off the brake, and then I'm back on again in the next phase here. So you can see it's very on and off. It's like using the brake pedal as a button, and actually down here in the steering, it enables me to. I'm not able to turn as much in this initial phase because I'm on full braking already, and as we know, the tyres can't do that. But here is the interesting bit. While I'm still braking, the yellow line is my trail brake line here. I'm still on the brakes, and my steering angle is actually far more. It's over 28 degrees more than I was able to achieve while I was not tail braking. As you can see, that one's only 37 degrees, this one's 65. And you can see when we're on the brakes, we're not able to turn, even if we wanted to. And actually, when we're completely off the and that's illustrated here again, and as we obviously go back on the throttle, then we're away. I thought it was a really interesting comparison, and just to illustrate that a little bit more, let me switch over to the sector times here. So the ones we're looking at here are turn 1 and sort of straight 2. It counts turn 2 as the left-hander after this section. So it's just these two sections here, the 4-second one and the 7.5-second one. You can see on the lap that we did trail brake, we were 4.075 seconds and then 7.519. Whereas comparing that to where we didn't trail brake, the lap 7 on the telemetry, we were almost a tenth slower in that initial phase, and then a tenth and a half slower in the sort of second phase of that corner. So again, that's sort of illustrated by these inputs and this speed here, where all the time that the white line is below the green one, we're just losing time all the time. And I can't get across to you how important it is to get this right. So I hope that gave you a good overview of trail braking, sort of why we do it, when we do it, and most importantly, how you do it, and a little bit of breakdown of the telemetry. So obviously, if you did like the video, then please do subscribe. There's going to be more insights coming your way very soon, as well as more track guides. So please do subscribe to the channel and give the video a like if you did find it useful, and obviously share it with friends. Until next time, guys. See you later.